and welcome back to another fine and exciting edition of It's Just About Time. And in today's episode, I talk about the Tudor Steel and Gold Root Beer GMT. I want to give some initial thoughts and feelings and impressions of the Tudor Steel and Gold Black Bay GMT. This is a new watch from Tudor that was been released just back in April, and a lot of people have had a chance to get their hands on it. This watch is not terribly available right now at most ADs. Some places will only sort of have one that you can try on, but you're not allowed to buy. Other places have allowed people to be able to buy them, so it's sort of luck of the draw as to whether your AD will be able to actually let you see one, or indeed let you buy one. I've been supremely lucky that the AD that I work with, I've bought like 5 watches off of them now, so I've built up some street cred with these guys, and they were quite happy to sell this to me because they know I'm not going to flip it, because that's just something I don't do, and I don't particularly approve of that behavior of buying these things brand new and then selling it directly on to make a profit, because at the end of the day that just makes the market more and more miserable for anyone who actually wants to buy one of these things to enjoy it, for potentially the rest of their lives. That's the sort of thing that has ruined Rolex as far as I'm concerned, because the market value of any given Rolex is now like inflated 2 or 3, even 4 times as much as they should be. So you can't get one, and this is where Tudor kind of comes in to sort of save the day, because at the end of the day the Tudor Black Bay line is of course a reference to the Tudor Submariner from 1958, which in of itself was the cut price version of the Rolex Submariner, and of course the Rolex GMT Master 2 is the modern version of the GMT Master, to which the Tudor Black Bay GMT takes a lot of design references from. But I think Tudor have done a really bang-up job on this thing. They've gotten just the exact right colour scheme with this steel and gold. It has to be said, the colours on this are incredibly lovely. Like, you can't really tell that much from a photograph. I mean, the same could be said of any watch. Like, it's different when you hold them in your hand and you can sort of turn them over and see how they react to the light conditions and all this. But the steel and gold is just absolutely gorgeous. That bezel insert, don't let it fool you. That brownish sort of red easily turns to a beautiful burgundy sometimes, and the sort of blackish, dark tobacco brown top end can almost look like a dark navy blue. Again, it depends on the sort of light that you have it in. If you have it in full sunlight, it just beams this wonderful warm vintage color. It's really, really good. So in order to afford the Root Beer GMT, I had to get rid of my Tudor Heritage and my Tudor Pepsi GMT. Now the Pepsi GMT was the watch I thought I was going to keep forever. It's a beautiful piece. It's exactly the kind of watch that I like. The Pepsi bezel is gorgeous, and I guess in a way it's a bit of a runners-up prize to the GMT Master 2, but the chances of getting a GMT Master 2 are absolutely zero. There are actually negative levels of possibility of me getting one of those. So the way I feel it is like, well, you know what, the Tudor, even though it is a bit of a runners-up prize, it's not a bad runners-up prize. In fact, I'm fast becoming sure that it's actually the better watch. The thing about these particular pieces is that the Heritage looks great because it has the gilt dial. The Pepsi looks great because it has the Pepsi dial and it's a GMT. But overall, I don't want 2 watches. And I feel like I've got too many pieces in my collection. So I was kind of looking at these 2 watches thinking like, I kind of need to sell one of these. I'm a little bit strapped for cash right now, and it's like, what can I do about this? And as I look at these 2 watches, I couldn't help but feel like if these 2 watches were combined, they would be perfect. You'd have the guild sort of dial of the Heritage, and of course the GMT functionality of the GMT. And of course, I was aware that the root beer GMT had been released recently, and so I took a few look at the pictures online. And unfortunately, these computer-generated pictures never really do the watch that much justice in terms of its look and color. You got to see it in person. And I picked it up yesterday, and it is everything I hoped it would be. The color on it is nothing short of miraculous. It's just beautiful. The bezel, it's very easy to confuse it for sort of just black and brown, but that's just not the color at all. It's very much more subtle now. The color on the bezel is much more akin to like a dark tobacco brown with hints of blue. It's really quite a crazy color. And then of course the reddish brown is more of a burgundy maroon brown, very odd combination of color, very eye-catching though, very delicious. And when you mix that in with the gold trim, what you have is a bezel and a case set that just can't be beat. It's absolutely great. Helicopter's taking off. You've got the typical case dimension sizes of 41mm Black Bay. So this is 14.6mm thick, which is a contention point for a lot of people. It's not for me because my wrist size is perfect for this. I have 7.5-inch wrists, so wearing this is fine. And I'm a guy who owns a Bremont Supermarine S2000, which is a 45mm diameter and 18mm thick. So thick watches do not frighten me. And of course it has the really nice vintage GMT functionality, so it's really designed to give you that flying GMT complication sort of feel, where the 24-hour hand is going to be your reference time, and you can adjust separately the hour hand, which also is your date quick set functionality. And it's a really gorgeous mechanism. I think I prefer that much more over the sort of ETA 2893 sort of GMT version. It's just, that's okay, it works, but there's something really nice about the sort of more traditional GMT elements. As much as I would look at the Black Bay Heritage, and it's a beautiful watch, and I love that dial with the gilt trim, the really nice vintage aesthetic and vibe, those really beautiful gold hands which just look excellent, and that really nice chapter ring which just drips with vintage aesthetic. It's really terrific. And I love the red triangle at 12 o'clock. That's always, it's a weakness of mine. I don't know why I love that so much. I just do. I just love it on any dive watch. It's really great. But as much as I like this watch, I'm always looking at thinking like, could this be a one watch collection? And the answer is yes, it could be, but then we come to the Pepsi GMT, a very similar watch with almost exactly identical case dimensions. This is again the 41mm case, and the only real difference is that they have beveled the bottom edge of the case to make it look a little thinner. But nonetheless, the Pepsi is an amazing watch, it really is. Dial is nice and vibrant and new, and this is definitely a watch that's not leaning on the vintage aesthetic. One could argue that the root beer one does, but in a different way, I'd like to think. I would look at the Tudor Heritage and I would look at the Pepsi, and I've got two of these watches side by side, and I'm irritated. I'm annoyed that I have to make a choice over which one of these to wear. You think that having choice is not necessarily a bad thing, and mostly that's true. It's nice to have variety, but in this case, it's like I don't want to have to favor one watch over the other. I kind of just want to, dedicate my attention to a few pieces, and in this case, both of these watches are really good, and I just kind of hated the fact that I have to sort of choose one over the other. And I've also been sort of thinking I want to thin out my collection a bit. I feel like I'm getting too many of them these days, and it's one of these days that's going to bite me in the ass, because of course when it comes time to do maintenance on these things, it's going to cost me a lot of money. Functionality wise, it's pretty much exactly the same as the Pepsi GMT that they already have. So you have obviously the GMT functionality, you have the date functionality. It is a 200 meter water resistant dive piece. which you could still use as a dive watch. I know a lot of the purists and professionals will be like, no, you can't because of the bezel. I'd like to point out that if you've ever handled one of these bezels, you will know you can't accidentally move that thing. It takes a fair amount of force to move that bezel, and with a bit of mental gymnastics, you can easily use it as a timing bezel. So yes, it is actually a perfectly usable dive watch. Obviously, if you're going to be doing deep diving, yeah, maybe you want to use something else. But certainly if you want to do sports diving, I see no reason why you wouldn't use this as a dive watch. And it's a great travel companion. It's just really gorgeous to look at. It's got such deep 70s vibes, and it's kind of funny. I mean, I'm a kid from the 1978 range. I grew up in the 80s, so it's kind of funny for me to think about the sort of missing the sort of 70s browns and oranges, and you know, the kind of the color tone we had back then, and yet, yeah, somehow looking at this watch, it really does fulfill a bit of a longing for a color aesthetic that went wildly out of style for a time, and then sort of a little bit of it's like, you know what, it's okay. Those nice, reassuring, very warm colors, the browns and oranges, it's like, yeah. Let's take a word about the bracelet. The steel and gold bracelet is very nice. It's very flexible, it's nice and thick. It feels like good luxury material. I guess the yardstick I use for whether I like a watch's bracelet or not, I compare it to the Omega Seamaster 300M bracelet, which in my opinion is the best damn bracelet ever made for a watch. That thing is smooth, it feels like silk. A really great bracelet, and I like the fact that it's thick in it, that it doesn't taper. I'm not a big fan of tapered bracelets, and even though the Black Bay bracelet does taper a little, it's only a little. And yes, I will admit the clasp does have a bit of a design flaw in that it will scratch the bracelet, but it's still a nice clasp and it's still a nice bracelet. It fits really well, it's very comfortable, and I guess if you're willing to just deal with the fact that it will tarnish a little bit of the links and that you're going to have to get it polished, but you know, you're going to do anyway. I guess when you get it sent in for maintenance, they'll polish the links, so it's no big deal. Or, you know, keep your scratches and you know, enjoy your war wounds, as it were. But it's a nice bracelet, and obviously what I've got it on here is a rubber strap. I particularly like having these sorts of watches on darker straps. I really like the sort of the rubberized feel, and so that's why I've been using this particular strap. And I like the fact that this one is a very similar kind of burgundy color to the bezel, and it has the gold hardware, or at least gold colored anyway. I think you really gotta go to a Tudor AD and try one of these yourself. It's just one of those sorts of watches you can't really sort of appreciate in its entirety, particularly its color scheme, until you've seen it in person. You can't really gauge the colors until you've seen it for yourself. And obviously I'm flooding you with imagery right here of what this thing looks like, and it's simply gorgeous to behold. The gold and the browns and the colors of this are just so damn good, with vintage vibe. I don't particularly like first impressions because, you know, you really need to wear, well, I mean, not just this watch, but any watch, you need to wear it for a time in order to know, strictly speaking, how this feels and get its vibe and everything. And with this watch, I mean, I absolutely adore putting it on. It's one of those things where I tend not to wear it too often because I'm babying it a little bit. I mean, I still have the protective plastic on the sides, and I had the protective cover on the back for a long time. It finally actually fell off by itself. But yeah, that just shows you sort of how much I'm kind of really enjoying this piece, because I kind of don't want to get it, like, you know, scuffed or whatever. It will eventually, of course. I mean, you know, just that's something that happens with any watch you're going to wear. But that doesn't mean to say I can't be careful with it. But every time I put it on, it feels right. It feels great. It's such a nice watch. And you take this outside, it's I think what I really enjoy about this watch is it's subtle. It's not opulent, it's not beaming and glaring its value to the world. It's not a Rolex where it's like, hey, I'm expensive, steal me. And the gold on this watch is it's just enough. You've got a solid gold bezel, with this beautiful insert, and the crown is capped gold. Now it has to be that because the element that joins the stem to the crown can't be gold because it's too soft. I think it wouldn't work. And also if it ever breaks and they need to dissolve the stem, I think it has to be a certain material which won't obviously also dissolve in alum. So yeah, that's probably one of the reasons they do it. But the capped gold is it's a nice thick layer of gold, and it provides an extra bit of thickness to the crown, so it's even nicer to wind. And actually, let's talk about that. Winding the watch is really gorgeous, butter smooth, and actually, for some bizarre reason, this particular version of this watch, the root beer, is actually nicer to wind than my original Pepsi. I'm not entirely sure why, but the Pepsi one, the gear trains were much heavier, so even setting the watch was kind of like you're moving all the parts and assemblies of Big Ben itself. So yes, I'm not entirely sure why that's a thing, but it is, so there we are. Anyway, but yeah, no, a beautiful, beautiful watch, and I feel like this is finally my grail watch. I think I found it, and I don't feel too bad about that because I think we're all looking for that one watch, and we all have our particular favorite thing that we'd like to have. And I suppose in an ideal world, if I had the money and it was possible, I'd have a Rolex, but at the same time, you know what, I'm looking at the Black Bay and I'm thinking I like the lack of a date blister. I think the date cyclops kind of ruins the aesthetic, gets in the way, makes it look, I don't know, annoying. and the aesthetic of the Black Bay, I dig it. Now I think it really depends on your size, particularly your wrist size, and something going on over there. And yeah, it's quite an active day. I thought I'd come out here and there'd be nothing going on, but there's actually all sorts of crazy activity going on. Well, as you can see, this is very much an industrial area, so lots of stuff. There's North Van over there, and there's the cruise ship docks over there. And this is all industry and sort of cargo container loading, etc. And this is Crabtree Park, which is well, it's a park, so makes sense. Basically, it's the same movement that you'll find in the Pepsi GMT, so there's no difference there. It's the caliber MT5652. It's a gorgeous caliber. Obviously a caliber that does have a bit of a tarnish on its record as having had early issues when it was released in 2018 with the jumping date function, which was sort of nailed down to incorrect sort of lubrication. Most ADs have said that basically this has all been fixed since 2020. So the allure of this watch was such that I ended up selling two of my favorite watches, my Black Bay Heritage and my Black Bay GMT Pepsi. I never thought I'd get rid of either of those watches. Those are both beautiful watches, and easily either of those could be a one watch collection. But I feel like my watch collection is kind of growing a bit too out of hand, frankly, with economic situation being the way it is. It can't help but feel like, well, it wouldn't be such a bad idea to pay off some debts, consolidate some watches, and have kind of less worry. And so yeah, and actually kind of getting sick to death of too much choice, which is kind of weird. It's like, well, you'd like plenty of choice, but sometimes when I'm choosing, like, which watch shall I wear today, sometimes I just want to choose between 3. I don't want to choose between 20. so I've actually taken steps to reduce my watch collection, and yeah, so more on that soon. I intend to review more watches, and I'm sorry it's taken so long to do any reviews at all. It's just I'm a very busy man, and watches is kind of a hobby. But I've got more information and such coming up soon. Certainly some stuff with Roldorf & Co., which, well, that's the whole story in itself, because there was a bit of a tragedy back in April where the shop was destroyed by a fire, and there's more to come on that soon. And more reviews for watches. I still have my Tudor Chrono Steel and Gold that I'd like to review. That's a beautiful watch in itself. There's also my Tudor Glamour Double Date, which is a great watch. I'd like to review that one. So there's more to come. So stay tuned, and I will see you on the next one.